I'm a representative of Queenslanders for Safe Water. We've been fighting this for a few years now, about 8 years. I've spent most of my working life as a medical laboratory scientist in the field of pathology, and I became concerned about fluoridation probably about 30 years ago now. As you know, most of Queensland's like 10 years and 1 hour behind you guys, as they say, with daylight saving. But Queensland wasn't fluoridated. Most of the other states in Australia have been heavily fluoridated for a long time now. They copied the idea from America, but Queensland didn't. Less than 5% of Queensland's population was fluoridated up till about the beginning of 2009. Mostly Townsville was the only large city and a couple of other little small towns. My sister moved to Townsville and she started going to university there. Basically, as soon as she went to Townsville, she developed this severe dermatitis. She'd never had it before. Every university vacation, she'd come back home and this dermatitis would sort of start easing off a bit. She'd go back, it would flare up again, same thing. This went on for 3 years. Anyway, eventually she went to skin allergists and all these things, right? Naturopaths, bought all these skin creams. She tried everything. She was really distressed about it. It was really painful and distressing to her. Anyway, eventually this doctor said to her, oh, it might be the fluoride in the drinking water. Well, she didn't even know the water was fluoridated, right? Anyway, she moved away from Townsville. Her dermatitis went away straight away. Never came back for another 25 years. When they fluoridated the Gold Coast, where she was living, she had bought reverse osmosis filters. She doesn't, she avoids fluoride in other ways. She only has a tiny patch of dermatitis from every now and then. But, compared to the 3 years in Townsville, it was terrible. And there are people who are chemically sensitive to fluoride, and she's one of them. But the health department says no one has allergies to fluoride. Well, it's rubbish. Anyway, back on the 5th of December 2007, Anna Bligh had been Premier for a whole 3 months, and she announces Queensland's going to be mandated, fluoridation's going to be mandated fluoridation. Over the next 4 years, just about all of Queensland, every Queensland town with more than 1,000 people, it's going to be fluoridated. They had newspaper ads in the newspaper all over Queensland. She said there was overwhelming evidence that, the Townsville children, which were fluoridated, had 65% less tooth decay than Brisbane children, which weren't fluoridated. Well, we've actually eventually tracked down where this 65%, this magic 65% came from. Now you think 65%, wow, that's fabulous. That's like 65% of your mouth, all those teeth in your mouth. What it was, they used data from 1990. This was 2007. And that 65% was like the tiny difference between two small numbers. It was less, there's over 100 tooth surfaces in a kid's mouth. This difference, 65%, was less than 0.2 one tooth surface. That's how they manipulate figures. It's a relative percentage, not the absolute difference. You've got to look at the absolute difference to see what it means. But they get away with it. They quote these wonderful percentages, and they don't ever tell you what this tiny difference is. Now, fluoridation progressed starting from early 2009. But in March 2012, Campbell Newman, the LNP government, was elected. And by the end of that same year, he'd overturned forced fluoridation. Mandatory fluoridation was gone. It was up to the councils then. He returned choice to the councils. They can continue, they can start, they can stop. Right? And that's what happened. Since then, 24 Queensland councils, about 55 towns, have rejected fluoridation. They either ended it or they voted not to start. Some councils have built fluoridation plants and they're already under the mandatory legislation and they're ready to use them. And then they voted not to start fluoridation. They still got their money reimbursed by the Newman government because he recognised that it had been forced on them, and the councils, the people, the ratepayers were the ones who are going to have to pay the ongoing costs, like you guys will have to, out of your council. Some of these Queensland councils recognised petitions to stop. Kuranda people collected those my will letters, but the Tablelands Council, the mayor was very anti-fluoride, so that was just a bit of support for them, right? Others did surveys, like the Cassary Coast. 66% of people said they didn't want fluoridation in that survey, so they didn't start. When Cairns stopped fluoridation, and that was a big deal. You know, the Dental Association went nuts because of that. The majority of councils based their decision on the Queensland Local Government Association position statement, which said basically that without the express consent of the community, that fluoridation was unethical mass medication. Now this was actually up till Anna Bligh, that was actually the official Queensland Government position statement too, the same thing. Without the express consent of the community, it was unethical mass medication. And they said that referendum guaranteed consent of the community. That's probably why Queensland haven't been fluoridated, because they don't like doing referendums. There's a big chance they will win, they will lose the referendum. The public don't want it if they're given a choice. In 2014, Mount Isa had a fluoridation plant ready to go because they'd been building it under the they'd started the whole process under the mandatory legislation. But because of local pressure, they decided to hold a referendum. Well, 89% of voters said no. They didn't want fluoridation. So the councils voted not to fluoridate, even though the Mayor, Tony McGrady, was a fanatically pro-fluoride. Because of ongoing local pressure too, at the end of last year, Southern Downs Council, which is Warwick and Stanthorpe and Allawarra, Killarney, they did a survey of everyone who paid water rates. So everyone on the two different water supplies in that council got a survey form. And the result was that in the people on the Warwick water supply, 65% of people wanted fluoridation discontinued. The Stanthorpe water supply, 70% wanted fluoridation discontinued. So the council voted to end fluoridation, even though that mayor was pretty pro-fluoride too. Now, unfortunately, the Mayor of Brisbane, Graham Quirk, has said, nope, it's staying in the water and you're not getting a referendum. And because of Anna Bligh's water grid, Brisbaneites are stuck with it for now. But there is a council election coming up early next year, so, you know, that is a possibility for activism then. Now, water fluoridation is an aberration. It is an idea, a 1950s idea from the USA that most of the world's never taken up. 95% of the world's population don't fluoridate, don't practice water fluoridation. Most of Europe doesn't fluoridate. A number of countries consider that fluoridation is unethical mass medication and that the water supply is not the way to deliver a medicinal treatment. And you know that World Health Organisation child tooth decay data shows that tooth decay in heavily fluoridated countries like Australia, USA, New Zealand, is just the same as the unfluoridated countries, which is most of the world, and some unfluoridated countries can have even less tooth decay. Recently, the USA Health Department lowered their recommended fluoride concentration down to 0.7 milligrams per litre. It had been up to 1.2 milligrams per litre. And that is now lower than what New South Wales Health makes the New South Wales Council's fluoridate at, 1 milligram per litre. It's the highest in Australia. At least in Brisbane it's 0.8, up in Townsville it's 0.6 milligrams per litre. And the reasons that the USA Health Department lowered that concentration to 0.7 is because of the high rate of dental fluorosis in children, and because children nowadays have access to so much fluoride. Toothpaste, mouthwashes, treatments at the dentist, right? Well, hello, we've had fluoridated toothpaste in Australia for about 45 years now. Now, I don't have a problem with fluoride toothpaste, mouthwashes, treatments. I mean, I don't have them myself, that's my choice, but that's the whole thing. It is about choice, right? If you want to buy fluoridated toothpaste, that's fine. And it goes directly to the teeth. That's where, if it's going to have any effect, that's where it has an effect, right on your teeth. You don't swallow it. It doesn't go into your stomach and the rest of your body. Your stomach, you don't have teeth in your stomach. Now, fluoride should not be added to drinking water. Especially because babies who are bottle fed when they use fluoridated water to make up the infant formula, they get 200 times or more fluoride than a breastfed baby would. Nature has sort of a protective mechanism to prevent fluoride going through the breast milk. So, you know, if nature wanted babies to have fluoride, so much fluoride, they'd put it in, it'd be in breast milk. It's just crazy. Who's right? New South Wales Health or Mother Nature or God or whatever, but you know, it's just ridiculous. Particularly now that fluoride is being recognised as a developmental neurotoxin. And it means that it harms children's developing brains. There are now 43 published human studies linking fluoride exposure, and they're not at hugely high levels either, you know, to lowered IQ. How many studies does New South Wales Health need before they say, hang on, let's have a rethink about this? There are 43 studies. They keep keeping on saying, oh no, it's perfectly safe. Just earlier this year, there were 2 new significant studies. They've never done this before. One linked fluoride to higher rates of hypothyroidism in England. Only 10% of England is fluoridated, but it was like, you know, about 30% higher rates of hypothyroidism in the fluoridated areas compared to the rest of England that wasn't fluoridated. And there was a new study linking fluoride, water fluoridation to ADHD in America. Can you imagine the cost of, you know, extra cases of ADHD to the society if, you know, water fluoridation is causing extra cases? Now, fluoridation's been around in America for 70 years. Only 15 years ago it was found that fluoride accumulates in the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland is a very important gland in your brain. And they find that with fluoride accumulation in the brain, that can decrease the amount of melatonin hormone that's released, and that's a very important hormone. It's, you know, the diurnal cycle in the body, the onset of puberty in children. We don't know. The Australian health authorities have never ever done any research on this. And meanwhile, while you're ingesting fluoride in your drinking water, and you don't even know, because when they add it, it's colourless, odourless, tasteless. You don't even know you're drinking it. But you can only get rid of 50%. If your kidneys are really well functioning, you're young and healthy, good kidney function, you can only get rid of 50% of it. So the other 50% of it stays in your body. It accumulates particularly in your bones, your joints and your tendons. You know, and there is sort of a belief that a lot of arthritis could be the early stages of skeletal fluorosis, not actually arthritis. But there's no evidence on that in Australia. They don't look for it. And also, there is evidence from the past, back in the 1940s and 50s, doctors in Europe and South America actually used to give patients who had hyperthyroidism fluoride to decrease their thyroid activity, because they didn't have good drugs then to do this, to treat them. So in fact, and the doses that they gave then, you know, overlap the doses that people can have now, that can get now from fluoridated water, particularly if they're big water drinkers. In 2013 and before that, the Lismore councillors were sent lots of information as evidence as to why, and arguments as to why fluoridation was a bad idea, both scientifically and ethically. I mean, it's mass medication, there's no doubt about it. You know, you put something in the water, they deliberately put it in the water and it's intended to have an effect on the human body, it's both mass medication and a medical treatment. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of evidence was provided to the council, but some of them just chose to ignore it. Now, the Mayor, Jenny Dowell, is very pro-fluoride, as I think you probably all know, and yet she's very anti-CSG. I hate CSG with a passion. And supposedly she's anti-CSG because she doesn't want to see the water poisoned. And yet, what exactly is she doing with fluoridation?
I mean, tad muddle, sorry.
The fluoride chemicals used, sodium silicate fluoride mostly, It's a Schedule 6 poison. It's imported from China. It's created as a waste product from the fluoride left over from the Chinese phosphate fertiliser manufacturing industry. You know, it's contaminated with heavy metals. The New South Wales Health allows up to 500 milligrams of lead and arsenic, cadmium, mercury in every kilogram of sodium silicofluoride added to your drinking water. That's what they allow. And they don't test every batch. They only just test a batch every now and then for the heavy metal contaminants. I guess if you don't look, you don't know, do you? Now these chemicals, this particular sodium silicofluoride, it doesn't even exist in nature, and yet they call it natural. Well, lead and arsenic are natural too. Do we want to add that to our drinking water? Now the public weren't given a choice here. I believe you had a referendum or a plebiscite on CSG. Is that right? Yeah. And it was, you know, was it 90% of people said they didn't want CSG? Well, they wouldn't. You guys weren't given a choice at all. There was no assessment of your health. See if any people have, you know, impaired kidney function and you have less ability to excrete that fluoride out of your bodies, the more will accumulate in your bones. They don't assess whether people have chemical sensitivity or they've already got an existing thyroid problem and fluoridation might drive their thyroid activity down lower or their borderline thyroid. No assessment of needs or health, right? And of course, there's never any follow-up either, ever. They will look at kids' teeth, but they don't look at anything else in your body. And fluoride goes all through your body. And there's never been any health and safety studies ever done. But they say it's safe. Trust us. Trust. Now, the 10th of December 2013 was a day of shame for Lismore Council. I was there. The meeting room was absolutely packed. And I think most of the people there, from the feeling of the room, were anti-fluoride. But I heard councillors, there were 5 councillors, Greg Bennett, Simon Clough, Vanessa Eakins, Ray Houston and Isaac Smith. And they were very articulate.
And the Italian guy.
They were very, yes, that's the ones who voted no. They were very articulate and they stood up, each one of those 5 councillors stood up and they gave well-reasoned, valid arguments as to why they did not want to force fluoridation on the Lismore community. Then there were 6 councillors, unfortunately, who voted yes, they did want to vote for fluoridation on the Lismore Council. And that was Gianno Piero Battista, Jenny Dell there, Neil Marks, Graham Menke, Glenys Ritchie and Matthew C. Schreiber. And they voted yes, they wanted to force fluoridation, have fluoridation forced on the Lismore community. Now when they got up, the ones who did get up to speak, 2 of them sat on their bum and didn't say a word, apart from voting to force fluoridation on the Lismore community. I mostly heard regurgitated pat from the Dental Association. One of the councillors was very confused. He thought the debate was all about vaccination. That's all he wanted to talk about. In fact, he actually wanted to know the intimate medical details of another councillor's children. That's all he cared about, and that's what he wanted to make the argument about. It's just unbelievable. And Glenys Ritchie, she got up and said that she was for fluoride, and that in America they fluoridated at 4 milligrams per litre, and so they only wanted to fluoridate at 1 milligram per litre here, so it was perfectly safe. She had it completely wrong. No matter how much information she was provided, she didn't even understand that. She got that wrong. So, you know, effectively it was a difference of 1 councillor, 6 against 5, and 1 councillor made the difference. And of course, you know, could have been heard with her misunderstanding. And now 40,000 people are going to be fluoridated. Well, okay. Now Queensland councils can end fluoridation if there's enough public activity, if there's enough will, political will, and enough pressure on the councils. But the way it stands at the moment, New South Wales Council can't unless they get the permission of the New South Wales Health Minister. So I think you need to go higher. You know, we've always thought that the way to end fluoridation in Australia is probably through the High Court on the mass medication issue. Because it is you know, they don't have to, it is mass medication. They say, oh no, it's not. Well, you look at it is. It is. That's exactly what they're doing, no matter how much they deny. The Queensland government had already admitted it years ago that it is mass medication. Other countries say it's mass medication. Now, fluoridation will end in America and in Ireland particularly. There's much more activity. Ireland has sort of basically mandated fluoridation too, and I think there's about 13 big councils there now that have, you know, passed motions that they want the Irish government to end fluoridation, and they're quite good groups over there. So I'm hoping that we will see Ireland end fluoridation in the near future. There's more and more interest and activity in America too, much more activism. So I think maybe more has to happen in America before it'll flow onto Australia, but it will happen. It's never too late to stop poisoning people. Now, the mass medication issue is what gets me the most. Apart from the fact it's not really very effective, and we can show lots of evidence, the difference between fluoridated countries or fluoridated areas and not fluoridated areas. If there is a difference, it's tiny. And pro-fluoridation or forced fluoridation promoters like to say, oh, but it's just the same as adding chlorine to water. Well, it's not. You know, chlorine kills germs and viruses to make the water safe to drink. You're treating the water. When you add in fluoride chemicals to drinking water, you are doing it to treat people. And they say fluoridation promoters, forced fluoridation promoters also say, oh, but it's just the same as adding thiamine and folic acid to bread. Well, it's not. They are proven essential nutrients. If you don't get enough of them, you have devastating consequences. There is not a single part of the body, a single biological process in the human body that needs fluoride. It's never been proven. No, it's no human or animal studies. You do not need fluoride. You can have perfectly good teeth without having fluoridated water. And we have it in the water. They say, oh, but we can control the concentration. Well, the concentration is one thing. It shouldn't actually be rocket science, although they get that wrong too. It's the dose. You can't control the dose because you can't tell people you can only drink 1 litre of water a day or 2 litres of water a day. Some people drink 10 litres of water a day, particularly if they work outside in the sun. Labourers, athletes, that sort of stuff. They can be drinking 10 litres of water a day, so they're getting 10 times the dose of someone who drinks 1 litre. It's against the principles of informed consent too. You didn't give your consent. Now, Byron, and you didn't, Lismore councillors did not have to do this, and neither did Ballina councillors. No. Byron councillors haven't done it. You know, again, it was only a difference of one councillor, fortunately, in the right way. But New South Wales hasn't come in and forced Byron Bay Council to fluoridate. In fact, because Byron Bay chose not to fluoridate, the New South Wales actually spent a couple of $1 million more money building the fluoridation plants, because instead of having one big one, they had to build 4 smaller ones because of Byron Bay. So, you know, if Lismore Council said, oh, but New South Wales made us do it, it was your council's choice. I had a little bit to, also with council, what gets me too is, you know, you elect them and their prime responsibility is the 3 R's: rates, roads, rubbish. You didn't vote for them to medicate you. I mean, what's the next step? They want to medicate you. Do they want to put statins in the water to reduce your cholesterol? Do they want to put contraceptives or fertility pills in your water? It's the same thing. It's a slippery slope. It's mass medication. A little bit on fluoride-free water. So I really appreciate what Mr. Haines here has done. And not only with the providing the fluoride-free water and drinks and foods and stuff, but also when Byron Bay was looking at this, there's a lot of petitions were collected for Byron Bay, Ballina and Lismore, and your business assisted in that greatly, I believe. Yes, thank you. I suppose I support the plan. And also, back in 2011, I was involved a little bit on the side with Al's case against Rouse Water and Ballina. And I've added that, I mean, fluoridation I think is a disgusting thing, but some really good things come out of it, and I was really happy to have associated with him. I mean, he's a wonderful human being. I think he's a great bloke. So is this lady here, she's a great woman, okay? And so you do get good things out of fluoridation. Now, someone's talking before about reverse osmosis. Oh, I think it was you, Jeff, about trying to get. There are 3 New South Wales councils. There's Murray Shire, Deniliquin, I can't remember the other one. But when they were beginning to fluoridate, people who had medical certificates saying that they could be at harm or at risk from fluoridated water, those councils provided free reverse osmosis filters. So I would suggest that anyone who has a doctor and you have a health problem, you know, to try it. You know, ask your doctor if you've got a, you know, like an open-minded doctor. Most of them have no problems with fluoride because they don't know anything about it. They're busy people. They don't research it for themselves. They just take the medical association's word for it. Oh, it's safe. No problem. So you can try that. And also, you know, if you've got water tanks, you can get water tanks if you're in the position to have a water tank, but you need to filter it, you know. Like in our area, we have lots of fruit bats and stuff, so, you know. And I don't know whether in your council, whether you're allowed in town to actually drink tank water, you're supposed to plumb it in for toilets and stuff. Well, that's another option to avoid it, Of course, if you can afford bottled water, but then you have the problem with plastics unless you have the ones where you can take back and fill up. And just because, I mean, I think fluoridation is imminent. They're commissioning the plants very soon. But just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's right and that you should just fold. You know, just keep processing. Complain to the councils. Remember who the councils were that voted to force this on you. You know, vote against them. Don't get these guys back in at least. Yeah, the councils who voted to force fluoridation are Piero Batista, Mayor Jetty Dow, Neil Marks, Graham Menke, Glenys Ritchie, who thought that we were going to, you know, America fluoridated at 4 milligrams per litre, and Matthew Schreiber. Okay, and Nimbin. Even though Nimbin is part of Lismore, because it has a different water supply, Lismore Council is not fluoridating Nimbin. And of course Byron Bay is not fluoridated, so, you know, if you're in those areas, take along your water bottles and fill up. That'll get you, you know, every now and then. So that's another way. You can't, you know, at least you can minimise your exposure. And that's what I recommend. So what I recommend is never ever give up. You know, they can do this to you, but you don't have to accept it. You just keep on protesting and you're talking to your neighbours and your friends and you educate them one at a time. Just, yeah. But because they can do it to you, doesn't mean it's right. They might have the might, they don't have the right. Thank you.